Hey guys, tonight we drift into a land where the air itself smells like gold. You're standing barefoot on warm sand, and every step releases a shy little puff of ancient dust that's been waiting centuries just for you. The wind moves in slow, lazy ribbons, carrying saffron, rose, and something deeper, like honey left too long in the sun. Somewhere in that horizon shimmer, a Persian court breathes quietly, and you're about to wander straight into it. And I'll be honest with you. You probably won't survive this, emotionally at least, because the vibes are dangerously soft and luxurious. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me where you're listening from and what your local time is. I love imagining you scattered across the world, all of us half asleep at wildly irresponsible hours. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking now, not in a hurry because nobody hurries in this heat. The desert isn't empty the way movies make it look. It's alive with low, secret sounds, sand sliding over sand, beetles ticking like tiny clocks, and far-off bells from a caravan that seems to exist just behind your field of vision. The wind curls around your face, scented with saffron and cardamom. This isn't fantasy, by the way. Saffron really was harvested and traded here thousands of years ago, and it was worth more than gold by weight, which means you're basically inhaling ancient luxury through your nose like a very sleepy billionaire. You feel fabric brush past your arm, soft, expensive, and cool. A caravan drifts by you as if you're a ghost. Camels sway with that slow, judgmental look they always have, their leather tacks studded with tiny bells. There are wooden crates packed with spices, frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, and crushed flower petals sealed in clay vessels to lock in the smell. As they pass, the air thickens and you realize you're not just smelling perfume. You're walking through wealth, through power, through a civilization that understood that scent wasn't just decoration. It was communication. It said, "You have arrived." Historians still argue whether early Persian courts used perfume more as a religious offering or as a political tool. Was it about pleasing the gods, or was it about overwhelming visiting ambassadors so they'd agree to anything just to escape the sensory overload? Honestly, both feels right. As the wind pushes gently against your back, you begin to see shapes rising from the shimmer of heat. Palm trees appear first, unreal and dreamlike, then low stone walls, and then the suggestion of columns. Tall, pale, patient columns watching you like old men who have seen everything and judged most of it. This is the outer breath of an ancient court. You step onto stone that's still warm from the sun. Court servants move past you, but they don't see you. They carry shallow bowls of crushed rose petals, sprinkling them into channels of running water so that the entire walkway smells like a blooming garden that never sleeps. This part is real too. Persian engineers were famous for designing garden water channels that cooled the air and carried scent through courtyards. Basically, air conditioning, but poetic. A quirky little truth slips into your ear like a secret. Some ancient Persian courtiers believed that strong perfume could protect the soul from bad dreams. They would anoint their pillows with scented oil not for romance, but for spiritual defense. Imagine being so committed to sleep hygiene that you fight nightmares with jasmine. You drift farther in and the wind changes character. It grows softer, almost polite, as if it's learned palace manners. Your skin cools. Shadows stretch long and blue across marble floors. The sky shifts from burning gold to a gentle apricot color. And in the distance, you hear faint music, thin, reedy pipes and a slow, drifting drum beat that sounds like a heartbeat that's had a long, fulfilling life. You're not a visitor anymore. You're part of the air. You move through silk curtains that breathe when you touch them. Somewhere nearby, someone is being fanned with peacock feathers. Somewhere else, a bronze brazier burns sweet-smelling resin. You inhale, and the resin smells like pine, honey, and a memory you haven't lived yet. There's a strange, fringe belief that floats through your mind. like a loose ribbon. Some stories claim Persian kings tested the loyalty of guests by changing the perfumes in the air. A loyal visitor would remain calm. An enemy would grow uneasy as the scent shifted. No one knows if this really happened, but standing here, with the air gently tipping from rose to something darker and smokier, you kind of believe it. The last light of day stretches thin across the horizon. The wind, now fully perfumed, wraps around you like a silk shawl. You feel heavier, softer, slower. The world narrows down to texture and scent and sound. Your footsteps don't echo, they melt. You pause near a pool of still water. The surface reflects not your face, but stars that are just beginning to blink awake. Your breath fogs slightly in the cooling air, and for a moment, everything is perfectly quiet. No rush, no noise, no future. Just you and a wind that smells like ancient flowers. And as you stand there, the air whispers that you're only just beginning to drift inward. You keep moving without noticing the moment you start floating instead of walking. The stone beneath you grows smoother, paler, and suddenly the shadows sharpen into tall, carved silhouettes. Columns rise around you like frozen waves, and you realize you've reached Persepolis without ever arriving. You just slid into it like a dream sliding under a door. The marble here is almost silver in the moonlight. It remembers hands. It remembers empires. Your fingers hover over carvings of lions and winged bulls, and the stone feels cool, calm, and slightly amused by your existence. Persepolis, once the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, was built during the reign of Darius the Great and expanded by Xerxes. That's a mainstream, very real fact, but right now it feels less like history and more like architecture deciding to breathe. Perfumed night air drifts through open courtyards. You catch traces of cedarwood drifting from massive doors reinforced with bronze. Somewhere, a low chant vibrates through the stone, as though the building itself is humming to keep you company. Historians still argue whether these palace structures were mostly ceremonial, or if they were used daily like a very intense office complex for people with way too much gold. You move down wide staircases decorated with reliefs showing delegations from across the world. Ethiopians with ivory, Indians with gold dust, Babylonians with textiles. The figures are carved mid-step, forever walking toward a king who no longer sits there. And as you glide past, you half expect one of them to blink slowly at you, like stone learning to be human. A strange little tidbit floats in beside you. Some ancient sources claim that Xerxes kept halls intentionally darkened, so that guests would feel small when they stepped into sudden light-filled throne rooms. Psychological lighting design, but make it terrifying and glamorous at the same time. You drift into a massive hall, the ceiling supported by pillars carved with double-headed bulls. Their stone muscles look tense, like they're holding up the sky out of pure stubbornness. The floor beneath you is polished so smoothly that reflections blur and mix. Your outline disappears into the room like ink dropped in water. Then comes the wind. It slips through cracked stone and open terraces, carrying the scent of baked clay, old smoke, and faint, stubborn traces of perfume soaked into the walls over centuries. This air has memory. It smells like bodies that once wore gold and oil, like beards brushed with myrrh, like robes that touched incense and gossip. There's a fringe story that Persian kings would release caged birds filled with scented oils during feasts, so the sound of wings came wrapped in fragrance. No one's proven this. No one's fully denied it either. You swear you hear soft wing beats somewhere above, and for one generous second, the air smells like crushed lilies and warm feathers. Your footsteps, or whatever they are now, make no sound. The palace feels like it recognizes you as a thought rather than a person. Moonlight spills across the stone and suddenly scorch marks appear in the corner of your vision. Blackened patches, charred columns, the ghost of fire that never fully left. Alexander the Great burned Persepolis in 330 BCE. That's a solid historical fact. It may have been revenge, it may have been an accident fueled by wine, or it may have been carefully planned theater. Historians still argue whether the burning was spontaneous drunken destruction or a calculated political message. Standing in the perfumed hush of this place, you can almost hear the crackle haunting the air. But tonight, the fire exists only as a memory. The scent here is cooler, calmer. Stone, night, and faint flowers carried inward by long, invisible corridors. You wander past fallen capitals, broken stair edges, and half-standing gates. The ruins feel less like death and more like something sleeping with one eye open. A light joke brushes by softly, so you don't wake up too much. You realize ancient kings had whole palaces this dramatic while you can't even keep your phone charger from disappearing. And honestly, that feels like a targeted attack from history itself. The sky darkens. Stars spread wide and slow above you. The marble seems to drink the moonlight until everything glows softly, like the place is lit from within. You reach the edge of a vast terrace and look out over darkness that holds both mountains and time. The perfumed wind returns, gentler now, brushing your shoulders. Saffron again, rose again, but also ash, always a little ash. The air curls around you and the palace breathes once more, not as a center of power, but as a soft, endless memory. You float onward deeper, guided not by footsteps but by scent. You slip forward as the marble softens beneath your feet, turning warm and faintly textured, like the stone itself has started remembering hands that once polished it. The palace air thickens, and you follow a trail of scent that moves more deliberately now, like it knows where it's taking you. The smell shifts from floral sweetness to something deeper, resin, smoke, and sun-warmed bark. Without realizing when the walls first appeared, you're inside a chamber where shadows pile up softly in corners like sleeping animals. Bronze bowls sit everywhere, wide and shallow, glowing faintly in the half-light. Thin spirals of smoke rise from them and then disappear into the high, dark beams above. This was real practice. Ancient Persians burned frankincense and myrrh in temple rituals and court ceremonies to purify air and spirit. It wasn't just for drama. It was believed the smoke physically carried prayers upward like scented ladders to the divine. You breathe it in and your chest loosens. The air tastes gold. Not in a metal way, more like honeycomb and warmth and old sunlight. White-robed figures exist just at the edge of your vision. They don't walk, they glide. Their hands move slowly, tracing delicate patterns in the smoke. These are the perfume priests, not a modern term, but the role feels real here. People entrusted with guarding sacred scents. A quirky, almost unbelievable tidbit floats in quietly. Some ancient Persian rituals supposedly included specific emergency aromas, used to shock someone back from fainting or fear. Imagine being revived not with smelling salts, but with a carefully curated sacred stink designed by people who took scent extremely seriously. Historians still argue whether scent rituals in Persian courts were primarily spiritual or psychological. Were they meant to communicate with gods, or to control human moods so subtly that no one noticed their own feelings being guided? Standing here, with smoke threading through your hair and curling around your shoulders, you can feel both answers hovering in the air at once. You drift closer to a central altar, low and carved, darkened from centuries of burning resin. The flames don't flare harshly. They breathe. Each flicker sends out a wave of fragrance. Bitter for a moment, sweet the next. Warm, slow, and strangely comforting. You notice that the fire never fully illuminates the room. It leaves parts in shadow on purpose, like mystery is part of the ritual. Above you, the ceiling vanishes into smoke. For a second, you get that modern thought. How weird it is that humans figured out mood lighting and aromatherapy before they figured out basic plumbing systems that didn't betray them at the worst times. History had priorities, and they were extremely scented. The wind outside bends and presses its face to the stone openings, trying to sneak in. When it succeeds, it mixes desert air with temple smoke. Hot sand and sacred resin mingle, and the effect is strange and hypnotizing. It feels like breathing time that's been warmed and filtered through belief. A fringe whisper slides through your thoughts. There are claims that certain Persian priests experimented with scent-induced visions, using strong botanical oils to induce trance-like states. This sits in that uncertain space where archaeology shrugs and ancient texts smile mysteriously. No one can fully prove it. No one can fully dismiss it either. You feel lightheaded, but not in a dizzy way. More like your body has remembered how to float again. The smoke makes everything slow. Even your thoughts feel wrapped in silk. The white-robed figures circle the fire, their movements measured and gentle. They sprinkle crushed herbs into the flames, and each addition changes the room's character by a degree you can feel but not quite describe. Outside, the sky deepens. The stone cools. Inside, the air glows. You notice small carved symbols around the altar, winged shapes, flame motifs, quiet reminders of Zoroastrian influence where fire represented truth and divine light. That's a solid historical thread running beneath this dreamlike scene, and it holds the room together like invisible architecture. A soft, almost lazy joke drifts through. Imagine being an ancient priest whose entire job was vibes manager, just standing there thinking, "No, the frankincense is too aggressive tonight. We're going to need more subtle emotional smoke." The ritual never really ends. It just softens. The flames lower themselves. The smoke thins until it's barely there. The figures fade into the darkness again. The bowls cool, but the scent stays, sinking into stone, into fabric, into you. When you step back out through the shadowed opening, the night air feels thin and lonely without that sacred warmth. But the perfume clings to you lightly, like your spirit brushed against something older and didn't come away unchanged. And somewhere ahead, you can already sense water. You drift forward and the dryness gives up without a fight. One breath ago, you were wrapped in heat and resin. Now the air cools, slows, and thickens with the soft, green smell of water and leaves. You don't notice when the stone becomes earth or when the shadows become branches. You're simply inside a garden that feels like it was planted inside a dream and watered with patience. This is a royal paradisa, the original paradise garden. That word didn't come from clouds and angels at first. It came from walled Persian gardens built for kings, designed as perfect squares divided by water channels. That's a real, very grounded historical fact, even though right now it feels like you've stepped into a living sigh. Water runs in narrow, carved stone channels at your feet. It doesn't rush. It glides. The sound is soft enough to lower your heartbeat by sheer suggestion. Cypress trees stand tall and dark, their shadows stretching like slow, polite giants. Their needles release a faint, peppery scent every time the breeze touches them. You walk barefoot through warm grass that somehow stays cool on your skin. Roses bloom in heavy clusters, pale, deep, blushing, almost unreal. Their scent isn't sharp, it's round. It feels like breathing silk. Somewhere out of sight, fruit trees hold figs and pomegranates so ripe they look like they might split just from being admired. Cyrus the Great was famous for creating landscaped royal gardens as symbols of cosmic order. That's one of your mainstream facts sliding in quietly. These places weren't just to look nice. They were meant to represent a perfect balance between nature and human design. You feel it in your bones. Everything is arranged, but nothing feels forced. You sit at the edge of a still pool. The water reflects more stars than sky. Your reflection wobbles in the surface and then steadies into something softer, calmer, like you, but after 8 hours of sleep and 0 responsibilities. The water smells faintly of lotus and stone, a clean, gentle scent that makes your shoulders drop without permission. There's a strange, fringe belief that floats in gently. Some ancient Persians thought well-designed gardens could lengthen your life by realigning your inner winds. They treated landscaping like spiritual medicine. Honestly, stepping into this place, you're willing to sign up for the full landscaping healthcare plan. Historians still argue whether Persian paradise gardens were primarily symbols of political power or spiritual philosophy. Were kings showing off, or trying to build small, earthly rehearsals for the afterlife? Sitting here with perfumed air and cool water brushing your ankles, it feels like both at once. A light joke drifts by, so softly you barely snort. You think about how modern people buy tiny houseplants and immediately feel like forest guardians, while ancient kings casually built scented ecosystems just to sip wine near them. You run your fingers through the water. It's cool, almost silky. Tiny ripples move far too gracefully for how small your motion was. Fish glide just under the surface, silver and slow, like living reflections that don't want to break the spell. The garden breathes with you. Leaves whisper. Water answers. A breeze moves through blooming shrubs and brings with it the faint sweetness of crushed petals. Servants pass silently along distant paths, carrying trays of fruit and cups of cooled drinks, but you remain unseen, untouched by duty. The sky shifts toward an endless midnight blue. Lanterns appear softly, one by one, floating like warm stars just above the ground. Their light doesn't hurt your eyes. It wraps them in gold. You lie back on warm stone near the water's edge. Above you, branches lace together, framing pieces of sky like broken mosaics. Your breathing slows until it matches the rhythm of the flowing channels. The scent of roses thickens, then fades, then returns, like a lullaby made of air. When you finally rise, the path forward feels inevitable. The garden does not close behind you. It simply watches you leave, knowing you will always carry its scent, its coolness, its quiet architecture of peace. Ahead, fabric whispers. Silk is waiting. You slide out of the garden as if passing through a curtain made of leaves, and suddenly the air shifts. It becomes softer, warmer again, but this warmth is different. It hums. It listens. You realize you are no longer in open space, but inside a world of fabric and footsteps that are trained not to be heard. Silk brushes your arms. It doesn't grab, it glides. Long, layered robes move past you in colors that feel expensive just to look at. Deep indigo, soft gold, tired crimson. The corridors narrow and widen in slow rhythm, like the building itself is breathing in a careful, courtly way. These are the inner passages of a Persian court, where conversations happen without sound and power moves without leaving footprints. A real, grounded fact settles in quietly. Ancient Persian imperial courts had highly organized systems of messengers and informants. There were structured networks that reported directly to the king, often traveling incredible distances with coded messages. And you can almost feel them now, eyes behind pillars, ears embedded in tapestries. The stone floor beneath you is cool, polished, and worn smooth by centuries of silent decisions. Every step you don't make seems to echo anyway. Torches sit in carved holders, their flames low and disciplined, making shadows that behave like they've been trained from childhood. A strange, fringed tidbit drifts by like a loose thread of silk. Some stories claim that Persian courts trained servants to walk in patterns that disguise the true direction of important guests. Basically, ancient palace misdirection so refined it could confuse people, without anyone ever lying out loud. Imagine losing your sense of direction because the vibe choreography was just that good. Historians still argue whether Persian court espionage systems were centralized and highly controlled, or more fluid and informal than later legends suggest. But here, in this scented hallway, it feels very real. Everything is observed. Nothing is trusted. Even the air seems to pause when you do. The wind sneaks in through high, narrow windows, carrying a faint trace of the garden you just left. Rose and water slip into silk and stone. The mix is disorienting in the softest possible way, like being emotionally confused by good smells. You pass through a set of long curtains made of layered fabric so thin that light turns into gold dust while moving through them. On the other side, a waiting chamber opens up. Cushions are stacked like clouds along the walls. Low tables hold bowls of dates, almonds and figs dusted with something that smells like cinnamon and orange peel. A light, sleepy joke drifts by. You think about how spies today wear sunglasses and tap phones, while ancient spies just stood very still behind curtains hoping nobody noticed their dramatic breathing. Footsteps approach. Not sharp, not loud. Soft sandals. Controlled. A group of courtiers moves through the chamber, discussing things that sound like poetry but feel like territory. Their hands move slowly. Rings flash in lantern light. Perfume trails behind them in careful, expensive ribbons. This was real too. High-ranking Persians were known to use personalized scent blends as a marker of status. Nobody smelled the same unless they were nobody. You aren't seen. You are a breath of air sitting between silk threads and polished stone. The talk of power happens just beside you, but you don't need the words. You feel it in posture, in pacing, in the way no one fully turns their back to anyone else. There's another strange belief that floats through. Some Persian courtiers supposedly burned subtly different incense before meetings to indicate whether the conversation was safe, risky, or dangerous. Like ancient mood rings for politics, powered by smoke. The corridors carry on, curling like ribbons. The further you go, the quieter it gets. Even the torches lower their flames. Even the silk slows its movement. The air grows heavier, layered with sandalwood and distant rosewater. You feel it now, the presence of someone who doesn't walk like a servant or a courtier. The queen is near. You don't see her at first. You feel her. The air tightens just a little, not in fear, but in attention. The corridor narrows, then opens into a chamber so soft with fabric and shadow that your eyes have to slow down to understand it. Heavy curtains breathe against stone walls. The floor is layered in woven rugs so thick they swallow sound completely. This room doesn't echo. It absorbs. She sits behind a thin screen of carved wood and silk where light turns everything into gold glass shapes. The scent changes immediately. The deeper woods fade and a clean, pale fragrance moves forward. Powdery, cool, steady. Iris oil. Real facts slipping in gently. Iris root, known as orris, was one of the most prized perfume ingredients in the ancient world, often used by elite women for its soft, violet-like scent. You're standing in the queen's private hour. No one announces it. No one interrupts it. You simply exist inside it as if the air made room for you. Attendants move slowly, with bowls of warm oil and folded cloths. Their movements are so careful they feel choreographed by sleep itself. A silver tray rests near her, holding tiny crystal vials. Each one catches lantern light and bends it into soft halos. Some of these oils are blended from crushed petals, roots dried for years and resins traded across deserts. You smell rose, iris, a trace of almond, and something faintly green and clean, like leaves after rain. There's a quirky, fringe belief that floats in quietly. Some ancient courts believed women of high rank could influence fate itself through the way they layered their perfumes. One oil for favor, another for protection, another for silent persuasion. It might be symbolic. It might be superstition. It might be ancient manifestation energy, honestly. Historians still argue whether royal Persian women held formal political power or if their influence existed only through private channels. Standing here, breathing the air they shaped, it's impossible to believe they were not powerful in ways that never needed written titles. She lifts her wrist, slow, deliberate, and an attendant dabs a soft oil along the pulse of her skin. The air stirs. You feel it along your own wrists like a sympathetic echo. The room doesn't get louder. It gets softer. The world tightens down to texture, oil on skin, silk in air, flicker of lamplight. A gentle joke brushes your thoughts. Imagine running an empire and still having a daily perfume ceremony, like some cosmic self-care routine that makes your skincare look like you washed your face with regret and a bar of sadness. The walls are painted in pale, fading murals, gardens, flowing water, flocks of birds. Everything is curved. Nothing is harsh. Even corners feel rounded by softness. This room wasn't designed to impress. It was designed to calm, to focus, to sharpen quiet authority. Outside, somewhere beyond thick stone, the desert still breathes. But in here, time lowers its voice. Attendants begin to clean the air after the scenting. They wave fans made of feathers and woven reeds, not to remove the perfume, but to spread it perfectly, evenly, like butter across warm bread. The ritual feels less about beauty and more about control, not of others, but of atmosphere itself. Another whisper of fringe thought floats through. There are old claims that certain queens trained themselves to recognize danger by smell alone, a foreign scent, a changed oil, a perfume that felt wrong. Sensory intelligence long before anyone called it that. The queen remains behind the screen, but her presence sits in the room like warm gravity. You don't see her face, and somehow, that makes it more real. When you finally move, the perfume follows you like a silk ghost. The corridor beyond feels richer, softer, and more dangerous somehow. Power here isn't loud. It smells like flowers and decisions. You drift onward and the silk-lined corridors loosen their grip. The walls breathe apart. The ceiling lifts. And suddenly the palace releases you out into open darkness filled with motion. Stars hang low and wide, and beneath them the earth moves slowly in long, patient lines. You are above the caravans now. Below you, endless strings of camels sway across dunes and hard-packed roads. Each animal moves with the tired grace of something that has walked through half of history and still has another appointment. Wooden chests hang from their sides, wrapped in leather and tied with thick rope. With every step, the air breathes out warm puffs of spice and resin. A true historical thread slips in as naturally as breath. Persia sat at the heart of vast trade routes that later became known as early silk roads. Not just silk, but frankincense, spices, precious woods, and perfumes moved across these paths. These weren't just roads. They were arteries of scent and story. You float just above them as if lifted by heat itself. The wind is warmer here, thicker, and it carries a strange music. Soft bell chimes from harnesses, the low murmur of voices, the rhythm of padded feet on dust. Every sound feels muffled, like the world's been wrapped in velvet. There's a fringe rumor that melts through the night air. Some caravans were said to carry false chests filled only with powerful scents, used to confuse thieves by making them think something far more valuable was hidden there. Imagine robbing a box and finding nothing but aggressively rich perfume energy. Historians still argue whether the rarity of certain spices in Europe was due more to genuine scarcity or deliberate trade secrecy and misdirection. Floating here, watching the careful way these chests are packed and guarded, it feels very intentional. You pass over small caravan camps glowing like islands of amber light. Fires burn low, protected from the wind. Figures sit in circles, passing cups that steam softly. The smell of tea, dark, slightly bitter, touched with cardamom, rises up and meets you. Their laughter is quiet, tired, and wrapped in the kind of closeness that only shared miles can create. You feel the temperature shift with the landscape. Flat desert becomes stony highlands. Sand gives way to hard earth. Wind turns cooler, sharper. The scent changes too, less sweet, more mineral, more open, as though the ground itself is breathing differently. A soft joke wanders by. You think about how modern shipping feels complicated, and these people were out here moving entire worlds across deserts with vibes, bells, and an extremely strong emotional support camel. You drift toward a section of road lined with stone markers, polished smooth by wind. Symbols are etched into them, trade signs, simple prayers, small bird shapes carved by hands that needed a bit of protection from the universe. Sometimes the caravan stops near a natural spring. Water is drawn from the earth, cool and clear. Perfume oils are checked like fragile children. Jars are carefully resealed. Nothing leaks. Nothing wastes. Another strange belief hums under the surface. Some traders reportedly slept with scented oils under their pillows to dream of safe routes. They believed the right fragrance could call the correct road out of the dark. The sky grows deeper. The stars multiply. The earth darkens below you into velvet waves. And far in the distance, the faint hint of fire appears, not wild, not destructive, but controlled. A different kind of sacred light rises ahead. You drift down from the cold sweep of stars and land gently in a place where the night feels warm, alive, and deliberately awake. The air thickens with resin before you even see the source of light. A low stone building rises from the darkness, simple on the outside but breathing heat from within. You stand at a fire temple. The heavy wooden doors are open just enough to let the sacred glow spill out in long, golden fingers. Inside, the flame does not roar. It rests. It stands upright in a bronze vessel, unwavering like it has mastered stillness. This is no ordinary fire. In Zoroastrian tradition, fire is a symbol of truth and divine order, a mainstream, firmly grounded historical fact, even though watching it now feels like watching a living being think. You step inside and the temperature changes immediately. Not hot, comforting, like sitting close to a hearth in the quietest time of night. The walls are smooth, pale stone marked only by faint carvings that catch shadow more than light. The smell here is different from the palace. This is cleaner, resinous, bright. You breathe in frankincense and something sharper, maybe juniper, maybe cypress. A quirky, fringed tidbit slides in like a soft spark. Some ancient stories claim temple firekeepers could tell a visitor's intentions just by the way the flame flickered when they entered. No science behind it, but deep spiritual vibes don't lie, energy. Historians still argue whether the earliest Zoroastrian fire temples were fully enclosed structures or more open-air sacred spaces. Standing here with darkness wrapped around warmth, it feels like both shelter and openness layered into one breathing room. White-robed attendants move slowly around the fire. Their steps are counted, careful. Nothing here is rushed. Ashes are brushed away with delicate tools. Additional resin is placed like a gift, not like fuel. The flame responds not with greed, but with gratitude. A light, sleepy joke drifts across your mind. This fire has better posture than you, and honestly it feels judgmental in a very calm, spiritually superior way. The heat grazes your skin. It doesn't burn, it smooths. The perfumed smoke rises in straight lines like it knows exactly where it's going. You feel your breath slowing, your shoulders lower. The world outside shrinks to a concept rather than a reality. There's a fringe belief that some worshippers claim they could breathe in honesty by standing close enough to the flame for long periods. They believed lies became physically uncomfortable in the presence of sacred fire. Imagine trying to bluff your way through a conversation while a holy flame quietly judges your entire personality. Outside, the wind pushes gently against the walls, carrying desert dust and night air. When it slips inside, it loses its edge. It becomes rounder, kinder, like the temple reshapes whatever arrives. The flame flickers once slightly, and the scent of resin deepens. Shadows move across ceilings like slow water. You realize that the fire is not just light. It is time compacted into something you can sit beside. When you finally step back outside, the stars feel colder. The sand feels rougher, but some of the warmth clings to you, stuck in your breath, in your memory of stillness. Ahead in the distance, you sense coolness again. Something chilled where nothing should be cold. You feel the coolness long before you understand it. After fire and desert, it feels almost impossible, like a soft lie being told directly to your skin. The air becomes cleaner, thinner, and strangely crisp as you pass through tall stone doorways that open into a palace wing built to defy the sun itself. Your feet meet polished stone that holds a quiet chill. The walls are thick, designed to trap night air and protect it like a secret. This is a summer court, and you are not meant to be warm here. Ancient Persian elites used early cooling techniques, thick walls, wind catchers, and ice brought from mountain storage. A very real historical fact that feels like a miracle in this moment. You step into a wide hall lined with shallow pools. The water is so clear it almost looks like glass. Servants move silently, carrying heavy metal goblets beaded with moisture. Mist curls close to the floor, hugging the cool stone like it's afraid to be taken back by the heat. Then you see it. Silver cups filled not with ordinary drink but with chilled wine. In summer, in the desert, this was real too. Persians stored ice in deep underground structures called yakshells and used it to cool food and drinks during hot months. But feeling it now, watching fog breathe from metal cups, it feels like sorcery with very good engineering. A strange fringe story slides through. Some nobles supposedly refused warm wine so aggressively that their servants traveled for days just to fetch mountain ice, because a lukewarm drink was considered emotionally unacceptable at a royal level. Historians still argue how widely accessible this ancient cooling technology was. Was it common among nobility, or an extreme luxury reserved for only the highest courts? Standing here, watching chilled air curl around your ankles, you can feel the extravagance hum in the stone. You drift between low lounges draped in pale fabrics that capture the coolness. The fabric smells faintly of mint and crushed leaves. Bowls of fruit sit in shadowed corners, grapes, melon slices, pomegranate seeds glowing like tiny lanterns. A few drops of water slide along the walls, catching light and then disappearing into thin grooves carved to guide them away. A soft, modern thought floats by. Imagine complaining about your air conditioner now, knowing people were out here casually inventing ice houses in the desert with no electricity and still hosting cold wine hangouts like it was nothing. You pick up one of the goblets, though it doesn't really exist in your hand. The coldness passes through you anyway. The wine smells sweet and sharp and deep, blended with faint hints of herbs. It cools your breath. It makes your mind slow. Lanterns flicker softly around the chamber, their flames smaller here, respectful of the cold. Shadows move like slow swimmers along the stone. The whole space feels built to preserve a single mood, calm relief from a hostile sun. Another fringe tidbit floats through the cool air. Some ancient Persian elites claimed cold drinks sharpened dream clarity. They believed warmth made nightmares more likely, and chill made visions honest. Sleep science, but make it luxurious and wildly unverified. Outside, the heat presses like a heavy blanket, but it cannot enter. Inside, you float between stone and mist, between silver and shadow. You feel wrapped in deliberate comfort, human defiance of nature rendered in architecture. Eventually, the mist thins, the cups empty. The cold settles into memory instead of sensation, and above you sense movement, feathers slicing silence. The faint whisper of wings greets you before you see them. You look up and spot the silver falcons, perched on tall posts and gilded rails, their eyes sharp, golden, and unnervingly alive. Their feathers catch the moonlight in ways that make them seem both metallic and feathered at once, like they belong to a dream sculpted from real birds. These aren't just birds. They are trained messengers, spies, and omens. Ancient Persian kings valued falcons not only for hunting, but also for their presence as symbols of vigilance and foresight. A solid historical fact that feels poetic in the still night air. Watching them, you feel like the court itself has grown wings, ready to observe every corner of the empire with unblinking precision. You step lightly along a terrace, your footsteps swallowed by thick rugs and stone. The air is scented faintly with rosewater, mingled with a hint of iron, almost like blood but not alarming, just presence, history. A whisper slides along the walls. Falcons were sometimes trained to carry small messages across the empire. A note, a tiny object, even a scent signal. It was their silent power that shaped kingdoms. A fringe story brushes past. Some falcon keepers claim the birds could sense political deception. They'd tilt their heads, hesitate, or strut differently when someone lied nearby. It sounds improbable, but somehow you feel their judgment pressing down on the entire courtyard, a subtle pressure you can't ignore. Historians still argue whether these falcon systems were formalized intelligence networks or if the stories are embellished myth. Either way, as the birds shift their wings, adjusting to the cool night wind, the air is alive with tension, with possibility, and maybe a bit of mischief. The falcons suddenly take flight. You follow them without effort, floating just above the tiled roofs. Their wings slice through the scented air, trailing hints of almond oil and desert thyme. Each movement is deliberate, elegant, and somehow coded. You imagine the messages they carry, invisible yet potent, coursing across the empire as if the wind itself were a courier. You drift past balconies where nobles lounge silently, observing unseen threads of diplomacy. The falcons' shadows stretch long across marble floors, falling over patterned rugs and shallow fountains. Somewhere below, a hidden attendant notes their flight, whispering the movement to someone far away, someone whose power rides invisibly on feathered backs. A soft joke nudges you. You realize your modern pigeon app looks tragically inadequate compared to these winged operatives, and you can't help but smirk at the inefficiency of modern life. Moonlight and lanterns mingle, highlighting carefully maintained courtyards where fountains bubble in hypnotic rhythm. The scent of crushed petals drifts upward, mingling with falcon feathers and cool night air. Everything is observed, nothing is wasted, and yet it feels effortless, like gravity decided to take a break and let artistry govern instead. Another fringe belief surfaces. Some texts hint that kings believed falcon flight patterns could predict political shifts. If a bird swooped too sharply or hesitated mid-air, advisors would take note. It's less astrology, more lived intuition, or maybe just clever storytelling for dramatic effect. You follow the falcons to a distant rooftop, where tiles shimmer faintly in the moonlight and shadows bend around you. The wind carries distant hints of rosewater rain, and you realize that these silent birds are not just watchers, they are guides. Their movement is language, code, and rhythm all at once. Somewhere ahead, the soft sound of falling water waits for you. The sound of water reaches you first, before you even see the source. It's gentle, persistent, and impossibly soft, like rain captured inside a palace. You drift down a terrace and find yourself inside a hall so wide it seems to hold the night itself. The ceiling is painted with delicate geometric patterns, and the light from high windows scatters in tiny prisms across the mosaic floors. Rosewater mist hangs in the air, suspended between floor and ceiling, softening every shadow. Every inhalation carries faint whispers of petals and marble. This is a sensory experience engineered for awe and calm, an actual practice in Persian palaces, where perfumed fountains and sprayed rosewater were used to delight, relax, and sometimes even influence the mood of guests. Historians still argue whether rosewater diffusion was mainly ceremonial or part of everyday palace hygiene, but here it doesn't matter. It just feels like magic. You glide along the edge of shallow pools where water flows in gentle channels, filling carved basins with soft ripples. Each ripple reflects gold tiles, mirrors, and carefully arranged lanterns. The air smells faintly of citrus, rose, and something green, like crushed leaves. The mist carries the scent delicately, letting it curl and settle like a whispered conversation. A quirky tidbit floats through. Some palaces reportedly had hidden mechanisms to regulate the rosewater spray based on temperature and the number of guests, making sure the mist was always perfect, never too much, never too little. Imagine having an automated scent system in 500 BCE and feeling smug about it. The columns are lined with carvings of flowing water, birds, and floral motifs. You run your hand along one and feel the subtle depression of centuries. Someone once argued that these carvings were instructional. They taught visitors how to behave with elegance and subtlety, like silent etiquette etched in stone. Fringe belief. Some courtiers thought staring at the patterns long enough could reveal future political decisions through the flow of lines and shapes. The mist thickens slightly as you approach a central fountain. Water spills from sculpted lions' mouths into a shallow basin, then continues along channels beneath the polished stone floor. You notice tiny petals floating in the current, drifting lazily like ancient confessions. Your reflection shimmers alongside them, almost merging into the petals, almost believing you belong in this perfumed, suspended world. A soft, sleepy joke drifts through. You imagine trying to host a meeting here today, and someone complaining about Wi-Fi while petals swim across their keyboard. It's a ridiculous image, but it makes you smile in the quiet. The hall isn't empty. Figures move slowly along side corridors, barely disturbing the mist. Their presence is ethereal. They carry nothing but whispers, footsteps absorbed by thick rugs and water channels. Some bring folded fabrics scented with violet and iris. The air grows denser with fragrance, but never overwhelming. It balances delicacy with authority. Another fringe belief flutters through. Rosewater was sometimes used in small amounts to test loyalty. Guests who overreacted to the scent or tried to pour it away were observed for hidden intentions. Today, it just makes you feel disarmingly calm, almost too relaxed to think of anything except the gentle trickle of water and the sweet, soft fragrance hanging around you. You pause in the center of the hall. Water laps quietly against carved stones. Mist curls around your ankles and wrists. The reflection of lanterns, pools, and petals makes it feel as though the hall itself is breathing in synchrony with you. It's more than beauty. It's a living, scented rhythm. And as you drift toward the next corridor, the air feels cooler, ready to guide you toward secrets still deeper in the palace. You step into the next corridor, and the air changes again, this time carrying a crisp, dry scent tinged with subtle cedar and amber. The floor shifts underfoot from smooth stone to intricately patterned tiles that feel almost alive beneath your touch. They ripple in color as lantern light dances across them, turning every step into a gentle kaleidoscope. The corridor opens onto a small, semi-enclosed courtyard, where water channels crisscross between raised flower beds. Jasmine blooms here, trailing their faint, sweet fragrance into every corner. The perfume is lighter than the rosewater halls, but sharper, more deliberate. It commands attention in the softest way possible. Persian courtiers often used such aromatic contrasts to mark different spaces in a palace, a subtle guide for visitors who were trained to read scent as much as sight. A quirky, fringe story drifts by. Some texts suggest that courtiers would occasionally layer scents to influence decisions, mixing jasmine and mint to encourage diplomacy, or cedar and myrrh to subtly intimidate. Historians still argue whether this was an actual practice or just metaphorical storytelling. Floating here, though, it feels entirely plausible. You walk along a narrow stone bridge that crosses a shallow channel, and the sound of trickling water underfoot is hypnotic. The garden is quiet, save for faint night insects that hum lazily in the background, like nature's own white noise. Above, lattice windows filter moonlight, creating delicate patterns that dance across the mist. The effect is mesmerizing, almost like the courtyard itself is breathing. Suddenly, a low, muted drumbeat reaches your ears. It's rhythmic, soft, and very deliberate. Someone is performing a night ritual, a quiet practice meant to align the mind with the subtle energy of the palace. These rituals were very real, though often symbolic, designed to harmonize the senses and prepare for the next day's political and social maneuvering. A soft joke flickers through your thoughts. Imagine trying to sneak in a Netflix binge while all this deliberate atmosphere exists, and realizing your modern distractions feel like shouting in a cathedral. You can't help but smile. The courtyard expands, revealing hidden alcoves filled with scented oils and delicately folded fabrics. Servants move silently, arranging offerings and subtly refreshing the jasmine petals floating on the water. The attention to detail is staggering. You realize the palace operates like a single, breathing organism. Every scent, every movement, every flicker of light is part of the same living rhythm. Another fringe tidbit drifts through. Some Persian texts claim that courtiers believed certain plant arrangements could reveal the intentions of visitors. If a guest lingered near a particular flower or water channel, it was considered a sign of curiosity, loyalty, or hidden ambition. It's hard to separate myth from fact, but the idea gives the garden a playful, knowing personality. You pause near a shallow fountain shaped like a lion's head. Water trickles gently, and you watch the petals float in soft circles. Your reflection merges with the floating flowers, creating a fleeting image of yourself that seems older, wiser, somehow connected to every hand that has walked these paths before. The wind shifts again, carrying the faintest hint of distant mountains and desert beyond the palace walls. You breathe it in, letting the coolness and fragrance mix in your chest. Everything slows. Every detail, every scent, every ripple of water is amplified. You feel simultaneously part of the palace and entirely unseen, a privileged ghost drifting through centuries of design, ritual, and perfumed intention. Ahead, the corridor curves again, and you sense another space waiting, richer, darker, and more secret than anything yet. The corridor bends sharply, and suddenly the air thickens like honey, rich with musk and oud. The faint jasmine of the courtyard fades, replaced by heavier, darker perfumes that wrap around your skin like velvet gloves. You sense the space ahead before you even see it, a private chamber, hidden and deliberate, where whispers are currency and presence alone commands respect. Stone arches frame the entryway, carved with intricate geometric patterns that seem to pulse in the lantern light. Persian artisans perfected these designs centuries ago, not just for decoration but to subtly influence perception, directing attention and creating a quiet rhythm in the mind. Historians still argue whether these patterns were purely aesthetic or intentionally psychological, but floating here, you feel the rhythm in your chest as much as in your eyes. Inside, the room is low and intimate. The ceiling is painted with constellations, each star connected by delicate gold filigree. A faint mist curls along the floor, carrying the scent of sandalwood and crushed amber. It feels like time itself has been softened, slowed to a gentle crawl. Every breath you take is a luxury you didn't know you needed. A quirky tidbit drifts into your awareness. Some elite chambers supposedly had hidden scent diffusers embedded in the walls, small reservoirs of oils and incense that could be opened or closed with levers to subtly adjust the atmosphere. Imagine a secret aromatherapy system built for intrigue, centuries before the concept existed. You notice a low divan near a shallow, reflective pool. The surface of the water is smooth as glass, catching the flickering lanterns and making the entire room seem as though it floats in liquid light. You kneel beside it and feel the air shimmer, heavy with unspoken conversation. You're aware of every detail, the tilt of a vase, the placement of a folded silk, the faint echo of someone walking miles away in another wing, and it all feels intensely intimate. A fringe belief surfaces. Some court officials claim that certain blends of oud, amber, and rose could amplify intuition, making it easier to detect deceit or sincerity. They may have been right, or it could have been pure superstition, but your skin feels sharper, your thoughts quieter, as if the scents themselves are training your mind to listen. You drift toward the far corner where a figure sits in shadow, veiled by a thin curtain of silk. You cannot see the face, yet the presence is unmistakable, commanding, careful, deliberate. It radiates authority so subtle it feels almost like gravity, tugging softly at the edges of your awareness. A sleepy joke drifts by. Imagine sending a group chat in today's world trying to coordinate empire-wide diplomacy, while someone like this simply inhales and shifts the room's energy. Efficiency, ancient style. The figure rises slowly. Each movement is measured, ceremonial like dance, like power distilled into flesh. The scent of musk deepens as they move past the diffused light, and you realize that this is the living embodiment of influence, the kind that never needs to shout. The room feels alive, aware of your presence, curious but unthreatened. You don't move. You don't need to. The air, the scent, the shadow, and the faint gleam of water all bend slightly around you, including you in the chamber's rhythm without saying a word. Outside, the faint echo of falcon wings reminds you that the empire continues, unseen but meticulously maintained. Here, however, time seems to pause, held in amber musk and quiet gold light. And somewhere in the shadows, a whispered decision lingers, waiting to drift outward like the scent of a perfect perfume. You step forward into the chamber that feels impossibly vast, yet intimate, where walls of polished stone curve around you like a protective embrace. The air carries an intricate mix of warmth, spice, and the faint chill of distant mountain winds, brushing over your skin in waves. A soft haze settles over the floor, perfumed with hints of amber, saffron, and crushed petals, lingering in the corners where lantern light barely reaches. You realize that this is the heart of the palace, the inner sanctum where the echoes of history hum beneath every surface. Marble steps rise ahead, smooth and cool underfoot. Each step sends subtle vibrations through the ground, like the palace itself is acknowledging your presence. The light comes from high, narrow windows, diffused so it casts golden streaks across arches, columns, and pools of water set meticulously along the floor. Water channels run in symmetrical patterns, whispering secrets to one another as they twist and turn beneath your gaze. You follow their gentle murmur, noting the care with which each basin has been carved, polished, and angled, proof that Persian engineers understood both utility and beauty centuries before it became fashionable elsewhere. A real historical fact presses forward. Persian royal courts invested heavily in hydraulic engineering. They built qanats, underground water channels, and yakshuls, ancient ice houses, to manage water, cooling, and irrigation with remarkable efficiency. Standing here, amid channels that reflect flickering lantern light, it is easy to imagine a world where every drop of water was as valuable as gold, yet deployed to elevate beauty, comfort, and ritual. Your fingers brush a narrow channel's edge, and you feel centuries of practice, patience, and precision pressed into the stone. The air is perfumed, layered in ways that feel deliberate. Jasmine curls with iris, mingling with faint cedar, sandalwood, and frankincense. A fringe belief emerges at the edge of your awareness. Courtiers once claimed that different scent layers could influence the outcome of negotiations, even bending mood subtly in favor of the host. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or strategy. You inhale slowly, and the scent wins through you like a secret language, subtle yet unmissable. You feel calmer, sharper, more attuned to every movement around you. Figures move through the chamber, quiet as shadows. Their robes whisper across mosaic floors, scented oils marking their passage in invisible lines that speak louder than words. Each gesture, each turn of the head seems choreographed, almost as if the palace itself orchestrates the dance. You notice tiny details. An attendant pausing just long enough to adjust a floating candle, a ripple in a pool catching the light, a carved floral motif that mirrors the curve of a servant's arm. It is impossible to distinguish what is intentional and what is simply the palace breathing. A quirky thought surfaces. You imagine trying to modernize this place, replacing incense with air fresheners and pools with plastic, and the absurdity of it makes you grin. The subtle elegance here cannot be replicated with gadgets. It is tactile, aromatic, and deeply alive. A whisper of history reminds you that Persian elites believed architecture, scent, and ritual were intertwined. Spaces could guide the mind, subtly instruct behavior, and even influence the balance of power without a single word. As you continue, the chamber opens into a domed hall. The ceiling is high, painted with celestial motifs, golden constellations, intricate zodiac patterns, and abstract shapes that suggest movement across the night sky. The lanterns below cast soft light, bouncing off reflective tiles and water surfaces, creating ripples of starlight across the walls. You realize the palace is teaching without speaking, instructing with shadow, light, and reflection. Your eyes follow the lines of the designs, and for a moment you can almost read them, sensing rhythm and balance instead of words. Another fringe tidbit slips in. Some accounts suggest that Persian astronomers and artists collaborated to create ceilings like this, combining spiritual symbolism with observational precision. Stars were not only decorative, they aligned with festivals, rituals, and seasonal movements. Historians still argue how exact these alignments truly were versus symbolic artistry. Here, under the lantern-lit sky of a domed hall, the boundary between science, religion, and art feels entirely porous. You drift closer to the central pool, where water reflects the painted stars above. The liquid surface shimmers as if it holds both sky and palace, blending celestial and earthly beauty. Small petals float atop it, carried by currents so subtle you barely notice. Your hand hovers over the water, and a ripple responds almost like acknowledgement. A faint scent of crushed rose and sweet herbs rises, coaxing your chest open, your mind slower, your attention sharpened. A soft, sleepy joke drifts. You imagine ancient courtiers in full regalia, walking barefoot to avoid disturbing the ritual sound of water, arguing over whether the star above is properly aligned with the royal bedchamber. It makes you smile. Absurdity and ceremony always go hand in hand. Figures appear along the edge of the hall. Some kneel near the water, tracing patterns with fingers barely disturbing the surface. Others move in arcs, delivering small offerings of scented oils or delicately folded silks. Their movements are gentle yet purposeful. They are not merely serving, they are performing. Every gesture, scent, and ripple participates in an invisible, orchestrated meditation on presence, power, and perception. Another fringe claims surfaces. Some texts suggest that if you observe the right sequence of water and scent movements, you could predict a noble's mood, or even political outcomes. It is part superstition, part intuition, and part artistry. You float amid these ripples, knowing that your own breath is now part of the delicate system. Inhaling amber, cedar, jasmine, and rose, you feel a subtle alignment with centuries of palace rhythm. The hall's far end beckons with shadow. Beyond the lantern glow, a narrow staircase winds upward. You know instinctively that this is not just physical ascent but metaphorical, a journey toward insight, toward perspective, toward a closer connection with the soul of the palace. The air grows cooler as you rise, scented now with faint juniper and earthiness, a reminder of distant mountains and the vastness beyond the desert walls. You pause halfway, looking down into the domed hall. Lantern light glints across pools and mosaics, reflecting off the rippling water. Shadows drift across gold-leafed patterns on the ceiling, merging with star motifs above. The palace, you realize, is alive, breathing, and aware of every movement. Every scent, every flicker, every whisper of air is part of an intricate dance that has persisted for centuries. A modern thought interrupts softly. Imagine trying to replicate this in a video game, a VR simulation, or a museum exhibit. The layers of scent, temperature, shadow, ritual, and reflection, entirely lost in translation. Here, in the presence of the real, the effect is cumulative, hypnotic, and deeply human. You continue upward, reaching the top of the staircase, and the chamber opens into a small, private terrace. From here, the empire stretches wide below, moonlight catching dunes, rivers, gardens, and courtyards alike. The air smells faintly of night-blooming flowers and cool stone. You inhale deeply, realizing that every step, every scent, every whispered ritual has guided you to this point. You are both observer and participant, carried by history, perfume, and air that has shaped lives long before your arrival. A fringe belief floats gently. Persian courtiers sometimes claimed that the top of the palace, combined with carefully timed scents and water currents, could induce visions of clarity, insight, and strategic inspiration. Whether superstition or subtle environmental psychology, you feel your thoughts sharpen and slow simultaneously, ready to absorb what the night has to teach. Below, the empire breathes in quiet synchrony. The wind carries scents of rosewater, sand, cedar, and resin across the terraces. The palace, in its infinite care and deliberate orchestration, hums softly beneath the moonlight. You feel connected, like a single, inhaling cell within a vast, living organism. The scents, water, architecture, and ritual are no longer separate, they are one. The terrace is empty, the wind gentle, the night deep. You pause, letting the perfume, the architecture, and the whispers of history settle into your chest. Every inhale, every heartbeat, every shadow is part of the rhythm, and you finally understand. This is what it feels like to move through a living memory, scented, weighted, and luminous. The stars above twinkle faintly in mirrored echo of the pools below. And somewhere far in the distance, you sense the last corridor waiting, dark, perfumed, and silent, promising the final secret of the palace. You step forward from the terrace, guided by the faint scent of oud and cedar that twists with a hint of jasmine, and the palace seems to lean closer, listening. The corridor ahead is narrow, low, almost whispering its way across stone, and every step feels cushioned by centuries of ceremonial rugs and polished marble. The air is warm, perfumed, and heavy with quiet expectation, like the deep inhale before a musical note breaks the silence. You trudge forward, the floor beneath your feet cool yet comforting, reminding you of the careful design that has kept this palace functional, beautiful, and alive for centuries. Persian architecture often integrated form, function, and climate sensitivity in ways historians still debate, the balance of beauty and utility perfected over generations. The walls are carved with delicate floral motifs, swirling like smoke caught mid-dance, interspersed with abstract geometric patterns that seem to shimmer as lantern light flickers along them. You recognize the subtle cues of hierarchy and intention. Each symbol, every curve, carefully placed to mark the passage of courtiers, servants, and royalty. Some fringe accounts claim these patterns were intentionally encoded with secret messages for insiders. A careful eye might read status, loyalty, or even hidden political intent. You catch your breath at the thought, feeling like an intruder in a living code that existed before and beyond you. A low table rests along the wall, covered with bowls of saffron-dusted nuts, dates, and small glass vials of oils that glint like captured sunlight. The subtle smell of cinnamon and citrus mingles with the incense that curls gently from nearby braziers. A cheeky thought flits past. If you had tried to sneak a snack here, you'd be detected instantly, not by sound or sight, but by scent alone. It's absurd, and yet perfectly plausible in a palace so meticulously orchestrated. The corridor bends slightly, revealing a final chamber ahead. Its doors are carved from deep walnut, inlaid with gold and ivory, polished to a gleam. You step through and are met with a space both grand and intimate. A low, domed room with a shallow pool at its center, water so still it mirrors the painted ceiling in perfect symmetry. Lanterns hang suspended from carved beams, their light bouncing in subtle angles that make the walls appear alive, breathing, and intimate all at once. The scent here is heavy with amber, myrrh, and sandalwood, layered carefully with rose and musk, the olfactory equivalent of a whispered secret. At the pool's edge, figures move with deliberate grace. White-robed attendants adjust floating petals, small vessels of water, and oil diffusers in silent choreography. The movement is rhythmic, meditative, almost musical in its precision. The entire chamber feels like a living instrument, each scent, shadow, and ripple contributing to a harmony older than any single life. Another fringe claim drifts in. Some texts suggest that royal presence combined with ritual scent and water flow could subtly influence decisions, moods, and even outcomes of court deliberations. Whether superstition, symbolism, or subtle psychological engineering, you feel its power pressing softly against your chest. You kneel at the pool's edge, watching petals spiral in gentle eddies. The reflection of lantern light mingles with the celestial patterns painted on the dome above, blurring the line between sky and palace, reality and dream. Your breath slows, your heartbeat aligns with the rhythm of water, lanterns, and perfume. A sleepy joke crosses your mind. You imagine sending this palace on a modern wellness retreat brochure. Relax, meditate, and absorb centuries of elite espionage and scent hierarchy. The room is silent but alive. A faint wind curls through the lattice windows, carrying the smell of distant gardens, warm stone, and night-blooming jasmine. Somewhere in the shadows, you sense the slow movement of falcons that have traveled courtyards and terraces unseen, observing, judging, guiding. You remember the water channels, the cooled wine, the perfumed halls, the fire temple, the falcons, the queen's inner chamber, all the moments that have threaded together to bring you here, to this perfect stillness. You close your eyes and inhale deeply. Each sense is aligned. The chill of stone beneath you, the warmth of lantern light, the rich layering of scents, the distant brush of night air. Time stretches and compresses simultaneously, as if the palace itself is holding a single, expansive breath. You feel anchored and weightless at once. The fragrance lingers after you rise. The air seems to hum softly, echoing the careful attention of centuries. You drift back toward the exit, taking slow, deliberate steps, carrying with you the memory of scents, shadows, and water reflections. Every corridor you pass recalls a moment. Rosewater fountains, jasmine courtyards, silk-lined chambers, falcon flight, sacred fire. Each layer folds into the next, building a quiet, cumulative magic that makes the world outside feel less urgent, less loud, more attuned. As you step outside, the night air presses gently against your skin. The moon hangs low and calm. The desert stretches infinitely beyond the palace walls, cool and perfumed by distant blooms. You inhale, letting the memory of the palace settle in your chest, imprinting its rhythm into your own breathing. Every step you take feels lighter, as if the palace has lent you a fragment of its timeless calm, its deliberate beauty, its quiet authority. And in that stillness, the empire hums softly beneath the stars, remembered in scent, shadow, water, and light. You carry a piece of it with you, folded into your mind, a perfumed, quiet memory that will linger long after you leave. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease gently toward rest. You've walked through palace corridors, floated above desert caravans, inhaled the quiet wisdom of perfumed chambers, and felt the watchful presence of falcons and sacred flames. Each scent, each shadow, each ripple of water has whispered its secrets to you, weaving together a tapestry of calm, deliberate beauty. Take a slow breath. Feel the cool stone beneath your imaginary feet, the gentle weight of history around your shoulders, and the quiet authority of rooms designed to guide thought and calm the spirit. Let the fragrances, rose, jasmine, amber, oud, curl softly into your memory, like gentle reminders that beauty and order can exist even in chaos. Let the whisper of water channels and the flicker of lantern light fold into your imagination, softening every corner of thought. Imagine floating above those perfumed halls once more, watching petals drift lazily in reflective pools, lanterns flicker in quiet rhythm, and shadows move without sound. Allow the subtle, orchestrated rhythm of the palace to slow your heartbeat, release tension, and settle your mind. Each inhalation brings calm. Each exhalation carries away lingering stress. You are suspended between history and dream, present and past, reality and imagination. And as your thoughts drift softly toward sleep, the memory of scented corridors, sacred fire, and watchful falcons folds gently around you. Let it guide you into a night of deep rest, quiet wonder, and soft, perfumed dreams. Breathe. Let go. And know that the empire in its timeless, scented rhythm hums quietly beside you. Sweet dreams.